and I have all, the connected pawns. He has two knights, which are in fairly backward positions over here. Again, not terrible positions, but my bishops are certainly much stronger. This bishop is slicing and threatening this pawn. This bishop is slicing into his king side. His knights are kind of passive over here. He plays c3. Obviously, he wants to defend against this pawn. He wants to defend against this. He wants to defend this pawn. He doesn't want this bishop coming in there taking his pawns. So I simply played rook e2. Now I've accomplished my goal. I've gotten to the 7th rank. So how do I go about taking advantage of it? If he moves the knight, obviously this pawn hangs. So he doesn't want to move the knight. He plays rook d1. This now is where the bishops come into play. This is where the superiority of my bishops are able to win the day over here. Remember, this rook is now defending this knight. So I played bishop a4, threatening the rook. Now, his only move, unless he wants to lose the knight, is to play b3. Now you can see he's really starting to get tied up. This knight is defending this pawn, which is blocking this rook, which is defending this knight. This knight is, all the way on the other end of the board and isn't doing that much. This pawn is hanging. Now, obviously, this bishop is hanging, so I have to worry about that, but this pawn is hanging, the knight is being protected by the rook, etc. So, what I did, rather than moving the bishop back, I played bishop takes e3. So now, if he takes my bishop, I take his knight with my rook, and not only have I won a pawn, he has terrible pawn structure on this side. He's got doubled A pawns, and he's got an isolated C pawn. One of them is going to be easy meat for my rook, eventually. If he trades them off, then they're going to be easy meat for any pieces. I mean, it's just going to be almost impossible to defend pieces with a pawn structure like that. So he doesn't want to do that. He moves the knight. He moves the knight to f3. And hemming in this knight a little bit more. Again, this would have been a nice square for this knight to jump to. Now he can't do that anymore. And then, of course, this pawn hangs. Bishop takes b3. Now I'm up by 2 pawns, and my advantage continues to grow. My bishops are now next to each other. They're in very strong position. He plays rook takes d6. Again, I saw that. I was perfectly willing to allow that because I get, because this pawn is now going to hang. So even though he's gotten 1 pawn in compensation, I have still an extra pawn, and I have this pawn that's hanging, and this pawn that eventually is going to be indefensible. So I played bishop takes c4. Now, I was prepared. I was really expecting him to take this pawn over here, to take the h3 pawn. I had calculated it. I thought that would be fine for me. I didn't think I wasn't too worried, but that probably would have been his best move. Instead, he played rook d8 check. Now, the big problem with rook d8 check is that it allows me to get my king close enough so that my rook can come back and defend it. In other words, if he would have taken this right away, there's nothing my king could have done about it. But now, by rook d8 check, it allows me to slide my king over to f7. There's a very famous endgame concept called building a bridge, and I don't want to go through it too much, but the basic concept is you get your king to a point where it can defend the rook when the rook comes in front of it. So that's really my idea over here. So when he plays rook d7 check over here, checking the king and this pawn over here, I just simply play rook e7. And once I play rook e7, he has to either trade off the rooks or he has to retreat. So he trades off the rooks. Rook e7 check, king take e7. And now I'm up by 2 pawns. I have 2 devastating bishops on this side of the board. His knights are all, discombobulated over here, and I'm perfectly happy at this point to trade off the bishops for the knights because I have 2 pawns over here that are going to be unstoppable in the long run. And this game is pretty much over. He kept playing it out. We ended up playing for like another month and a half, but this, the game ended, relatively unceremoniously. He plays g4. Looking to establish any kind of a breakthrough on my side. And remember, he can't move his knight over here because of this bishop. He can't move his knight over here because of the bishop also. These knights are, if he moves his knight over here, it could get traded off. His knights are really hemmed in by my pawns and my bishops. So I played f4, further hemming him in, further, trapping his knight. I wouldn't say trapping necessarily, but forcing his knight to stay where it is and not allowing him any freedom of movement. I realize that I'm going to queen on the queen side, so the less movement I allow him on the king side, the better. You always want to, if you're better on one side of the board, you kind of try to shut off counterplay on the other side. He plays h4 again, desperately trying to achieve some counterplay on the king side. Rather than just take it, which would not be a good idea. If I take it, then he takes it with the knight, and all of a sudden he's got a lot of extra space. Doesn't mean he would win the game anyway, but he can move then this knight over here. He can advance this pawn, try to break open this side, and maybe get some play going over here. So instead, I just move king f6, defending this pawn. H take g5 check. H takes g5, and now he's just as hemmed in as he was, just -1 pawn from each side. He plays king g2, trying to get something in, so he's really shut down on the king side, so it's time to start marching on the queen side. b5, knight g1. Now, I could have played the bishop over here to b2 and trap this bishop, but I figured why bother even, maybe that might give him a little extra time to move his knights over. So just right away go for it. b4, a takes b4, c takes b4. I've got 3 moves to queen. I calculated that he couldn't possibly get his pieces over to defend this because of the fact that my bishops would just trade off with any knight getting close enough to threaten the queening square. He plays knight h3, again threatening to come over here and take this pawn, and I realized that, but that was fine with me because I realized he didn't have enough time anyway, so I just played b3, knight f3. I realized this pawn is hanging, nothing I can do about it anyway, so I just keep marching the pawn. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, then I played, why did I do that? Okay, I played that because, not really sure, but I played bishop d3, knight takes g5. Oh, okay, right, I know exactly, because because after he took this, I didn't want him to be able to have the threat of knight e4 check, winning this bishop over here, and at the same time guarding the queening square. So I just played b2. He plays knight h7 check. At this point, he's just really prolonging the game. King g7, knight g5, and then just get the queen. Okay, and this I'll just pretty much play it out. Knight e6, and I let him have that last pawn, but that's perfectly fine. Pin the knight again. I just want to trade him off, no problem. He check, and I'm just trying to get out of the check just long enough to trade everything down. And then once I did that, so I figured I would go get another queen, but I didn't really need to because he basically lost the pawn by trying to push it over here. Then by putting the knight in front, he just loses that because it's pinned, and so then I go ahead, take it with the bishop, and just drive him into the corner and made him pretty easily. So that was that game. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you have any questions or comments or whatever it is, please feel free to post them, and I will see you next time.